This video is part of the You Protagonist series. Here, you don't just listen to a story, you live it in every single detail and emotion. With every scene, every decision, you are the protagonist. And so you can picture yourself in every moment. The main character's face never shows, nor are her name or physical features ever mentioned. So take a deep breath, close your eyes if you want, and get ready to feel everything as if it were real. The sound of ice clinking in a glass, the soft chime of a flute being set down on a marble table, the woody scent of rushing businessmen. Everything in that VIP lounge moved in silent choreography, and you were part of it, like a shadow, like an invisible detail in a luxurious setting. No one really saw you there. The polished uniform, the precise steps, the trained smile, all part of the mask. You served, cleared, overheard conversations by accident, memorized orders and pretended to feel nothing. But you did. You felt it in your bones, the exhaustion, the loneliness heavier than the tray in your hands, that unbearable longing for something that could take your breath away. But deep down, you didn't even know what that meant anymore. It was just another day, another shift, another round of champagne for passengers going places you'd probably never set foot in. The tiredness wasn't just in your body, it was in your soul. That aching sense that life was always happening for everyone else but you. And there you were, stuck, watching it all go by, hands full and heart empty. You moved through the tables like an efficient blur. Fake smiles earned real tips. Thank you. Excuse me. Can I get you anything else? Your lines were automatic, but your thoughts weren't. Today, more than ever, something was off. A nameless unease. A weight in the center of your chest, like something was about to happen. In the staff room, the air was warmer, the noise more human. Laughter, chatter, complaints. Someone mentioned an important guest arriving today. You didn't pay it much attention. You'd heard that before. Rich folks, powerful people, people who show up and disappear, like all the rest. You headed back to the lounge and felt a slight shift in the air. Maybe the AC flickered. Maybe it was just your imagination. But something made you pause for half a second. The glass door slid open with a faint hiss. A group walked in, dark suits, upright postures, sharp eyes, and in the center, him. You didn't know who he was, but your skin prickled, even with the room's cool air. He didn't speak. He didn't smile. But he moved like someone who's never been ignored, like someone who commands everything, without ever raising his voice. You tried not to look. Tried. But when his eyes met yours, for a split second that felt like forever, something hit you. A silent electric jolt. A wordless pull. He didn't look away right away. He watched you. You turned your face, pretended everything was normal, carried on like nothing had happened. But the floor beneath your feet didn't feel quite the same. The tray in your hands didn't feel as steady. It wasn't just another day anymore, because something deep inside you felt it. You'd been noticed. And maybe chosen for something you didn't yet understand. You thought it was just a glance. One of those fleeting moments caused by exhaustion, or by a daydream trying to break free from routine. But he didn't leave. He stayed there, sitting in that dark leather armchair, legs crossed like he owned the place. His eyes scanned the room with surgical precision. No mistakes. No hesitation. The kind of man who doesn't need to raise his voice to be feared. The silence around him said it all. And in some strange way, he didn't care about being invisible. He wanted to be seen, but only by those he chose. And he had chosen you. You felt it in your skin. As you walked with the tray balanced in your hands, pretending nothing had changed, every cell in your body lit up. The air around him felt heavier, like even the molecules bent toward his presence. You didn't look again, but you knew. He was still watching. Back in the pantry, your coworkers whispered, "It's him." The owner of that private security empire. He's got government contracts. He's been spotted next to presidents. They say no one messes with him. You listened silently, pretending not to care. But your heart was pounding. You returned to the lounge, walking steadier now. You didn't want to look shaken. But as you passed by him again, a strange warmth hit you. Despite the air conditioning, you felt his gaze burning into your skin. He didn't look at you like someone who wanted you. He looked like someone who was choosing you, evaluating every detail, no rush, but with purpose. The third time you passed him, he moved, just enough to subtly block your way. It was smooth, but just enough that you had to stop. Your eyes slowly traveled up and met his again, this time closer. "Miss," he said, his voice deep and measured, with a slight drag on the last syllable. "What do you recommend tonight?" It was a simple question, but coming from him, it felt like a trap. You hesitate, the words vanish, and it's not out of fear. It's something more primal, instinctive, like standing in front of something you can't name, only feel. You answer politely, listing off dishes from the menu, trying your best to sound natural. He listens to every word as if weighing the sound of your breathing. He thanks you, but he doesn't smile. He just watches, until you walk away. In the back hallway, you lean against the cold wall, trying to catch your breath. Your fingers are shaking. The tray almost slipped. What the hell was that? He spoke to you like any other passenger, but there was nothing casual about the way he approached. It felt like he already knew who you were, like he was simply setting in motion something he had already decided. You head back to the lounge once more, and he's gone. And you thought, just another one passing through. But this one shook you in a way you couldn't even explain. The next day looked just the same. But you didn't. You barely slept. Woke up with the feeling that something inside had been switched on. Like a forgotten part of your skin had come alive. Just because of the way he looked at you. Like he already knew exactly what you were missing. At the lounge, you try to act like it's just another shift. But it's not. The atmosphere's changed. Others might not notice it, but you feel it. As if the world had shifted slightly off balance. As if someone had moved something essential. And then, in the middle of the night, he returns. Alone. No security detail. No noise. No rush. He walks in with that same quiet confidence you remember. But this time, you're not a shadow carrying trays. You're the fixed point where his eyes land. Your whole body reacts before he even reaches you. You fake being distracted. But he doesn't let you off the hook. When you reach him, before you can even open your mouth, he says, "I like your presence." It's rare to find someone who knows how to be silent without disappearing. A compliment wrapped in a confession, and you have no idea how to respond. He doesn't smile, but his eyes soften for a second. You serve his drink and walk away. Fast, like you're running. But you know it's not running. It's self-defense. Minutes later, when you return to collect the empty glass, you find something else on the tray. A folded card. Smooth, black, no logos, no marks. Your name is handwritten on it. Firm, steady handwriting. A silver clip keeps it shut. Your hands hover. No one's watching. You open it. It's an address and a sentence. Tonight, 8 p.m. You decide. Your heart races. Blood drains from your face. You tuck the card away without thinking, like it might burn your fingers. Back in the pantry, you try to breathe deeply, but the air feels heavier now. Why would he do that? And worse, why are you considering going? You stare at yourself in the bathroom mirror, searching your reflection for answers. But what you see are the eyes of someone who's spent too long dimming their own light. Someone who's tired of waiting for life to happen. And now that it is happening, has no idea what to do. At the same time, reason whispers, "Isn't it dangerous to meet a stranger you've barely spoken to?" To calm your nerves, you casually bring him up in conversation with your coworkers, trying to gather more info. About who he is, about what kind of man sends a card like that. At 7:47 p.m., you're still sitting in the locker room, dressed, ready, but frozen. Like moving even a muscle would seal something that can never be undone. You pick up the card again, trace the handwriting. Those words echo inside you, loud and clear. You decide. He didn't order, he invited. As strange as it was, that detail breaks you more than a command ever could, because he's the kind of man who never has to ask twice. But with you, he waited. You stand up slowly, not sure if you're walking into something that will set you free, or completely destroy you. But you know this. You couldn't go to bed tonight without finding out what's behind that stare, that invitation, that calm, that control, that seems to fall apart every time he's near you. The world outside stays the same, but inside you, something has shifted permanently. The rideshare car stops in front of an elegant house on the edge of the city. The kind of place that doesn't show off, but demands respect in its silence, in its clean, minimalist architecture, in the entrance flanked by perfectly trimmed trees. Not what you expected. No guards in sight. No signs of over-the-top security. Just an automatic gate that opens the moment you approach, as if it already knew you were coming. He's out there, waiting, alone, no suit, no armor. Wearing a rolled-up gray shirt and his hands in his pockets, he looks at you with a mix of relief and tension, like he'd bet everything on this moment and wasn't sure how to begin. "I thought you wouldn't come," he says in a low voice, almost vulnerable, but with a half-smile that lands straight in your heart. You watch him. There's something unguarded about him. It's not the house, not the setting. It's the look in his eyes. For the first time, you see a man without complete control. A man about to offer something he's never given anyone before. Sincerity. He opens the door. The inside of the house is understated, with soft lighting and details that say more about him than any background file ever could. Old black and white photographs, a bookshelf packed with strategy and philosophy books, a piano in the corner. It's the home of someone who thinks too much and feels in silence. The place is warm, but reserved. Dark furniture, leather and velvet textures, an unlit fireplace. He watches you like he's waiting for confirmation. But you still don't have answers. "This isn't where I live," he says, catching your gaze. "It's where I come when I need to remember who I am, without the contracts, the numbers, the risks." You feel your body soften a little. It's like he's not just offering the space, he's offering a piece of his soul. And coming from him, that's worth more than any confession. But at the same time, that confession shakes you. Wait, this isn't where he lives? Did he bring you to a secret hideout for some kind of hidden rendezvous? Does he have a girlfriend? A wife? Kids? He pours you tea, not wine. The gesture surprises you. It's thoughtful, intimate, almost gentle. Then he starts right away. "I imagine you might think I'm involved with someone for bringing you here. But I'm not. Actually, this place is a kind of refuge for me. It brings me peace, and I wanted you to see it." You smile, on the inside, because that's exactly what's been throwing you off. He sees you. Without the uniform, without the role, without the walls you built around yourself. You two talk for hours. He tells you what he does, and how you caught his attention. Your body feels light and tense at once. He moves closer, without invading. He simply stays near, close enough for you to feel his warmth. But he doesn't touch, doesn't push. He just stays. "I'm not asking you to decide anything right now," he says. "I just needed to look into your eyes and tell you, something about you disarmed me, and pretending I'm still in control, after that, would be the biggest lie of my life." You take a deep breath. The world spins out there. But here, in this house that holds the parts of him no one sees, something between you two begins to form. Not from urgency, but from truth. "Are you afraid of me?" he asks. You hesitate. "No," you answer, even though the no feels fragile, like glass on the edge of cracking. He nods and stays silent for a few more seconds. Then, with the care of someone handling something precious, he reaches out and touches your wrist. A simple gesture, but enough to make the whole world stop. You look at him, and he looks back. The tension between you is no longer about danger. It's about surrender, about the courage to feel, about a desire growing without permission, and that, in that moment, became impossible to deny. He steps a little closer. His breath brushes your skin. He smells deep, woody, masculine. His gaze is serious, like he's fighting a war inside himself between instinct and respect. And then he says, "I don't touch what isn't given to me." The sentence falls between you like a sharp whisper. You hold his gaze for long seconds. And then, with a barely there movement, you lean forward. It wasn't a kiss. It wasn't an embrace. It was a yes without words. A door opening. One you didn't even know had been shut. And in the moment he understood that, he closed his eyes. His breath was so close to your skin that time itself seemed to pause. There was no urgency, no rush. Just a silence charged with electricity between two bodies that until now had avoided each other out of fear. Fear of falling into the abyss of feeling too much. But now, there was no turning back. He pulled you in slowly, with one firm hand at the back of your neck, and your lips met for the first time. Not like an explosion, but like a confession. A kiss with no map, but a clear destination. Intense, heavy, and filled with everything you both had been trying to bury. When you pulled away, his eyes were still closed, as if he were memorizing that moment from the inside. As if, for the first time in a long time, he didn't need to be in control of anything. "I don't know what I'm doing," he murmured. "But I know I can't not do it anymore." That confession hit you deeper than the kiss itself, because it came from him, from the man who, up until now, had seemed unbreakable. The night unfolded like a slow dive. No promises, no unnecessary words. Just feeling. His touch was firm, but gentle. His fingers moved across your skin like someone reading something sacred. He undressed you slowly, as if every inch revealed was a whispered prayer. You didn't make love. You surrendered, in every way that word implies. Hours later, you lay with your head on his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of a heart that, not long ago, seemed incapable of beating for anyone. The warmth of his body, the texture of his skin, his scent, everything felt real, tangible, and somehow unreal. "How long have you been alone?" you asked, without lifting your eyes. He took a while to respond. "Long enough to forget what it feels like to trust someone," he said finally. "And now it's like you're tearing down a wall I didn't even know I built." You didn't say anything, but you understood. Because deep inside, something similar was happening to you too. Outside, the sky began to lighten slowly. Morning light crept through the cracks in the curtains, painting the room in golden tones. You rose quietly, walking to the window. Outside, everything looked calm, but something inside your chest tightened. He came up behind you, wrapped his arms around your shoulders, pulling you gently back against his chest. "Is it safe for you to be here?" you asked, not hiding what you felt. He hesitated, just for a second. But that pause said more than any answer. "For now, yes," he replied. "But the world I live in out there, it doesn't let me lower my guard. And that scares me, because having feelings for you is lowering my guard." You slowly turned your face to look at him, and that's when you saw it. He was trying. Not trying to be someone else, but trying to be a man. With you. And maybe that was the rarest thing he could offer. You didn't ask for promises. You didn't ask for guarantees. But right there, with his eyes locked on yours, you felt it. Something had been sealed between you two. Something stronger than fear. More honest than any word. Something the world out there would never understand. But in here, within these walls, it was already impossible to undo. It felt strange to see him, the most feared man in the country, according to rumors, right there with you, completely unguarded, just trying to find a place to let his heart rest. While he made coffee, you wandered into the living room and found a shelf filled with files. You hadn't meant to snoop, but one envelope was slightly open. Inside was an old photo. A younger man in a suit with a hardened expression, and two boys in the background. You recognized one of them. It was him, younger, with those same intense eyes, but without the weight they now carried. You didn't hear him approach. "That's my father," he said, stopping behind you. A man who believed love was weakness, and that safety came from fear. You slowly turned around. He had the same expression from the photo, rigid, cold. But his eyes, they carried something different now. Guilt. "And you?" you asked, lowering the photo. "What do you believe in?" "I believe I'm starting to forget everything he taught me," he said, unable to hold your gaze. There was a heavy silence between you. The tension from before was still there, but now it was different. It wasn't desire. It was fear. The fear of feeling too much. Throughout the day, you shared quiet moments, gentle touches, half-spoken thoughts, and even a few smiles. Yes, there was affection, but also hesitation. Like he didn't know what to do with the lightness you brought. Like part of him wanted to push you away, just so he wouldn't destroy you. By late afternoon, you were getting ready to leave. His hand held yours, firm, but not stopping you. "I don't know how to move forward with you without putting you in danger," he said, in a voice too low to be resistance. You didn't answer. You just kissed him, lightly. You walked out without drama. No scene. But your heart was full of something you still couldn't name. And as you closed the door behind you, you knew. Your life was about to change completely. 2 days of silence followed. 2 days of returning to your routine like slipping into clothes that were way too tight. Nothing fit anymore. Not the clinking of glasses. Not the forced smiles from guests. Not the perfectly pressed uniform. You couldn't stop thinking about him. About the way he held you. Not knowing how to let go. About that line, spoken with the voice of a man who'd lived trapped between walls and memories. You tried to rationalize it all. It was just a moment. It was madness. It was way too fast. But none of those thoughts felt true, because what happened between you wasn't superficial, and ignoring it hurt more than admitting what you were feeling. On the third night, after your shift ended, he was there, leaning against his car, his sleeves rolled up, carrying a kind of exhaustion that wasn't physical. It was like he'd fought his pride for hours, and lost. "I need to talk to you," he said when he saw you. You hesitated, but your feet moved before your mind could decide. On the drive back to the house, the silence between you felt different this time. Not awkward, but tense, in a more intimate way. When you walked in, he didn't turn on the lights. He just headed to the living room, took off his watch, and tossed it on the table, like he was shedding a much heavier weight. "I grew up believing emotion was weakness," he began, not looking at you. "That the world was divided into those who control and those who are controlled. I chose to be the first, always." He took a deep breath, his shoulders tense, jaw clenched. But then you showed up, with your silence, with that look that didn't ask for anything, but said everything. And suddenly, I found myself questioning all my rules. I found myself wanting to stay somewhere I shouldn't. You moved closer, slowly, as if any sudden movement might break whatever was about to happen. He finally looked up. "You disarm me," he said, his voice laced with a kind of pain that was almost beautiful. "And that scares me more than any weapon I've ever faced." The air felt warmer. The space between you, smaller. But there was no rush. You touched his hand. He laced his fingers through yours, like someone clinging to an anchor. "I don't want to run from this anymore," he whispered. "I just don't know if I can protect you from everything that comes with me." You didn't answer with words. Instead, you touched his face. A simple gesture, but filled with meaning. He leaned his forehead against yours. "Teach me," he whispered, voice breaking. "Teach me how to love without destroying." And in that instant, you understood. He wasn't cold. He'd just been frozen for years. But now, in front of you, he was beginning to thaw. Your connection deepened even more that night, and in the days that followed. You started to live moments of passion and emotion you never imagined you'd experience. And it brought you both fear and happiness. Because finally, you'd stepped out of the dullness that once ruled your life. It was on an ordinary night that everything started to fall apart. You were at home, making something simple for dinner, your body still carrying the memory of his touch, your mind echoing the whispered promises of the past few nights. Everything in you felt more alive, and for that very reason, more vulnerable. The doorbell rang. You weren't expecting anyone. When you opened the door, 2 men in black were standing there, discreetly armed. One showed you a badge. The other wore an expression of restrained urgency. "He sent us. You need to come. Now." There was no time for questions, just the chilling certainty that something was wrong. Very wrong. You got into the car without knowing the destination. The silence of the 2 men was more threatening than any siren. When you finally arrived, it wasn't the same house. It was a different one, smaller, more remote, with mirrored windows and a single entrance. A hideout. Inside, a woman greeted you. Serious face, steady gaze. "You need to know, he's gone." The words dropped like a bomb. There was an operation against him. A false accusation, but dangerous enough to put his life at risk. You were in shock. "Accusation of what?" you asked, barely able to speak. "Of leaking classified government information. They're claiming he used his private security network for personal gain. But it's a lie. You know that. He would never." "Why now?" The woman sighed, like she'd been expecting the question. "Because he refused a dirty contract. An international government wanted him to carry out an illegal operation disguised as a diplomatic mission. He said no. So they set him up. Made it look like he was the traitor. And they might come after you next, just to push him further." Your body went cold. The woman placed an envelope on the table. "He left this with us, in case he disappeared. He wanted to make sure that no matter what happened, you'd be safe." Your hands trembled as you opened it. It was a single page, handwritten, unmistakable. His handwriting. "If you're reading this, it means I failed to protect you from my world. I don't want you to remember me as the man who brought chaos into your life. I want you to remember me as the one who truly saw you and wanted to stay with you forever. If I come back, I'll find you. If I don't, know this. You were my final truth." You couldn't hold back the tears. He had stood against a system that wanted him on his knees and disappeared not out of fear, but because protecting you meant leaving you. Now, he was being hunted by people with too much power. People who wanted to silence him. And they'd use anything, including you, to do it. But you weren't just a spectator anymore. And if it came to it, you'd be the reason he'd find the strength to come back. The safe house was too quiet. The hours stretched. The days felt endless. You read his letter like someone rereads an unfinished fate, replaying every touch, every word, every look. And over time, One certainty grew inside you. He was alive. Not out of hope, but because whatever existed between you two was still beating, still breathing. On the 7th night, the porch light flickered. You were alone in the living room. You ran to the door, heart pounding, and there he was, wounded, covered in dust and dried blood on his shoulders, shirt torn, breathing heavy. But his eyes were there, steady, looking for you. You rushed to him. He leaned on you with a fragility he'd never shown before. And yet, he was still him. The same man who saw you in the middle of nothing. The same man who disappeared to save you. "I needed to see you," he whispered, voice raw, "before I vanish again, or fall for good." You brought him inside, heart racing. You tended to every cut, washed every wound gently. He didn't cry, but his eyes were weighed down by a pain that wasn't just physical. It was grief. Grief for himself. "They tried to destroy me," he said, his head resting on your lap. "They used everything, contacts, even my own men. And still, the thing that hurt the most was leaving you behind." You touched his face, feeling the light scratch of his stubble against your fingers. "I waited," you said, "because I knew you'd come back." He closed his eyes, like someone who had finally found shelter. "I don't know if I can rebuild everything I've lost," he said, "but if I have you with me, maybe I don't want any of it back." You stayed quiet for a while. Fingers intertwined, bodies resting in mutual comfort. There was pain, but there was also a kind of peace he'd never known, and that you'd only ever found in his arms. "They're still after me," he said. "But now, they know they can't use you against me anymore. You're out of the equation. Because to make that happen, I had to give everything up." You looked at him, your gaze steady, though you didn't quite understand what he meant. "I don't want to go back to being invisible in my old life," you said. "I want to walk beside you, wherever you go." He smiled, for the first time since he returned. A small, tired smile, but full of truth. "You're not my weakness," he said. "You're the only thing that kept me standing." That night, you slept on the floor of the living room, wrapped in each other's arms. No luxury, no armor, no fear. The days that followed were strange, silent, intense, suspended somewhere between reality and a dream. He spent hours sitting in the living room, staring at nothing, eyes of someone who had seen too much. And you stayed beside him, honoring every silence, every breath, every pause. But deep down you knew your time together might be limited. They were still looking for him. The organization that framed him still had power. His allies were gone. His businesses frozen. The empire that once seemed untouchable was now just smoke. On the 4th night, you sat together by the fireplace. He handed you a dark wooden box. Inside were 3 things: an encrypted phone, a wristwatch, and a simple silver ring. "This was everything that defined me before you came into my life," he said, staring into the fire. "I lived between appointments, secrets, and control. But now, I want only one thing." You took a deep breath. You knew what he was about to say, but hearing it still hurt. "I'm going to disappear completely," he continued. "There's a place, a safe route, a new life. But I have to vanish, and you have to decide if that's something you want too." You felt the air grow heavy in your lungs. "What if you try to fix this? Clear your name?" "I could try, but they'd hunt us for years. They'd use you to pressure me. They'd dig until they found something to use against you. You think that's a life?" You lowered your gaze. It was true. There was no going back to the world he once knew. And maybe that wasn't a tragedy. Maybe it was freedom. "If you want, you can stay. Start over your own way. Without me. I left you a fund, enough for you to live well, to live free. But if you choose to come with me, you'll have to let go of everything you know." You stayed silent for a long time. Then, without saying a word, you reached into the box, picked up his watch, and slipped it onto your own wrist. He looked at you, confused. "That's not an answer," he said softly. "Isn't it?" you replied with a bittersweet smile. "I'm telling you that if I have to build a life from scratch, then let it be with the one man who had the courage to break down his own walls for love." He stood still for a moment, then closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they were wet. "You have no idea what you're giving up," he said. "Yes, I do. I'm giving up a life that never really belonged to me. A routine where I just stood by, watching life happen. Now I want to live, even if it means staying hidden for as long as it takes." He moved closer, knelt in front of you, and held your hands firmly. "I can't promise safety or stability, but I promise that wherever we are, you'll be the center. My only truth, my only compass." You rested your forehead against his and whispered, "I don't want an easy life. I want a life with you." The luggage was light. You didn't need much, just the essentials to start a new life. In the quiet hours before dawn, you left the safe house. The car was ordinary, rented under a different name, with swapped plates. The plan was set. Every step, every detour, every new document. He had thought of everything. But even with all that strategy, there was one thing he couldn't hide: the fear of losing you along the way. At the private airstrip, the runway was empty, the cold wind slicing through the silence of the night. A small plane was waiting. He handed you a coat, placing his hand on your back with that protective gesture you knew well, the kind that says, "I've got you." "Are you sure?" he asked. "Once we take off, there's no turning back." You looked him straight in the eyes. "But is there a beginning?" He took a deep breath, cupped your face in both hands, and whispered, "For the first time in my life, yes." During the flight, the world below looked too small. The city lights faded behind you like distant memories of a life that no longer belonged to you. He held your hand like someone gripping an anchor. But for the first time, it wasn't to avoid sinking. It was because he wanted to stay grounded. Right there. With you. When you arrived at your destination, a country where he had quiet allies, new identities were already waiting. For the first time, he looked lighter. You had never seen him smile like that. Not when he kissed you for the first time. Not even when he came back to you, hurt and exhausted. It was the smile of someone who had finally stopped running from himself. In the small hotel room, he pulled a small blue velvet box from his pocket. You froze. "It's not an engagement ring," he said. "Not yet. But it's a symbol." He opened it. Inside, a delicate chain with a tiny silver key pendant. "You unlocked a part of me I didn't even know existed, and if everything ever falls apart, I want you to remember. You were the one who opened the door, no one else." You took the necklace with both hands, put it around your neck, and then hugged him. Tightly. For a long time. Like someone who knows that even in a dangerous world, they've finally found a home in each other. There, with no threats, no past, you were no longer a waitress. And he was no longer the most feared man in the country. You were just two survivors of the impossible who met in an unlikely moment. And chose not to let go. The new life didn't begin with fireworks. It began with freshly brewed coffee at just the right time. With soft laughter on cloudy mornings. With notes left by the bed. It began with the ease of walking hand in hand without fear of being followed. With the kind of silence that exists only between two people who understand each other, even in the dark. With him stepping up behind you in the kitchen, wrapping his arms around your waist just to remind you he's there. To love you. To protect you. The new house is small, with big windows and bright walls. He insists on keeping the curtains open now. He, who once hid in the shadows, now seems to enjoy watching the sun pour in without asking permission. You still have nightmares sometimes. He wakes up drenched in sweat, breath ragged, his mind trapped in places you don't know. You wake up crying, mourning a version of yourself that no longer exists. But in those moments, there are arms. There is shared breath. There are hands that never let go. No one knows who he is where you are now. To the neighbors, he's just a quiet man who works from home and doesn't talk much. On one of those slow afternoons, he sets a cloth on the little outdoor table, 2 glasses, and a bottle of local wine. "It's been exactly 1 year today," he says, with that look you've learned to read, "since the first time I saw you, in that lounge, holding a tray like you were carrying the weight of the world." You smile, clink your glass against his. "And you?" With that look of someone who was never challenged, you reply, teasing, "Until you saw me." He laughs, that laugh only you know, the one without defenses, without control. You toast, not to the past, but to now, to the courage it took to leave everything behind, to the beauty of choosing love, even knowing the risks. That night, lying under the stars, he asks if you ever miss your old life. You pause for a second. "I miss a few people," you say, "but not the woman I used to be, because she didn't know how much she deserved to be loved like this." He turns to look at you and says something you'll never forget. "I thought I was choosing you, but the truth is, you were the only one who had the courage to truly see me and love me even before I knew who I was." You smile, close your eyes, and there, in the middle of a foreign city, with false names and an invented life, the two of you are more real than you've ever been, because love doesn't need a stage, just 2 hearts willing to stay.